So Cheatham, welcome to the Patent Professor interview series. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure to be here. I really appreciate you reaching out.
So, and it's funny you say reaching out, but I just want our viewers to kind of get an idea that stumbling across you was not our usual process. We were not looking for an inventor to interview. I actually had a problem with a pet cat, Roger the cat, and our home was just always a mess because the cat would like spill stuff out of its feeding bowl. And I found your product. I saw it. It looked amazing. I wasn't even thinking as a patent attorney. I actually at that point was just a pet owner trying to keep our home clean and trying to find a solution. And when it arrived, it's amazing. And that's when I reached out to you and I started looking more into it and saw that you had patents on it. And I asked if you would participate in an interview because it's just so fascinating, not just the product, but then I saw your bio and how you have multiple products out there. So without further delay, our moderator is going to play a short video so that our viewers get a chance to actually see the product. Because I think if anyone that has a pet's going to understand the need for it right away. So Crystal, go ahead and let's play the video.
Need a new pet bowl for your stylish but messy furry friend? Introducing the smart and trend-setting Unspill-a-bowl. Unique rounded rim designs. Keeps food and water in the bowl. Keeps ears out and guides food into pet's mouth. Slows down eating. Large, medium, and small love it. Even cats love it. Unspill-a-bowl. Keeps water from splashing out. Water stays in, even when shaken. Heavy-duty, food-grade stainless steel. Dishwasher safe. You and your pet are going to love it.
This is phenomenal, great video, and it really shows the need for the product. I have to say as a user, like we've used it mostly for food, but after seeing this video, I'm thinking we need a second one for the water bowl because even though the cat doesn't spill water, but inevitably you have to move it from somewhere to somewhere else, and even if you're sliding it, it causes spills. So between the two products, the pendant saddle, which we'll talk about later, and this one, which was your first one that you launched?
It's sort of interesting because the Unspill-a-bowl idea came to mind first, and I started working on it first, and then the pendant saddle later. But the way they both progressed, they actually launched right around the same time, and they're totally independent. So they both launched around, the pendant saddle actually launched around January of 2020, and then Unspill-a-bowl came out in March. We actually had a trade show and showed it there. Unfortunately, early 2020 was right before COVID, so we had to tackle some challenges because of that. But they launched right before COVID and the lockdown started. So
wow. So let's start with the Unspill-a-bowl, and maybe with the inspiration. Like what prompted you to try to come up with your own solution for this problem? Did you start like a lot of inventors to try to buy something and look to see if there's something out there, or did it just come to you overnight? Tell us about your journey.
Exactly, that's exactly what happened. In the video, the very first dog, the poodle, is actually my baby. She recently passed, unfortunately. That's Misa, and she was my inspiration. And I have to mention, all the other cats and dogs are my grand dogs and cats. They're my daughters. But yeah, so Misa, at the time I was feeding her raw food, and inevitably with a regular bowl, there's always, like you said, cats have the same issue. Many dogs. Being a poodle, she was very polite and ate, carefully, but food would always inevitably end up on the floor. And I was really concerned with bacteria and germs, so in keeping the kitchen and our dining area clean. So what I wanted to do was I wanted a bowl that would keep the food in, so all I had to do was worry about washing the bowl and nothing else. And so, like you said, I went to the market and looked, and there was nothing like it. Everything's all about mats, right? So you're probably familiar with getting a mat, but then you got to wash the mat. If you get a diner that sort of keeps in place, then you got to wash the whole diner. So when I couldn't find what I was looking for, and again with my because I kept a list of problems that I wanted to solve. So I added this to my list and decided to see what I could design. And it doesn't really take much. Once you sort of start thinking about keeping the food in, that's how the curved, the uniquely rounded curvature came to the bowl. And I guess I've got it here. So the key thing with this one was the way the curve is. So if you do it too much, the food gets trapped underneath it and the pet can't eat it. If it's not enough, the food falls out anyway. So I had to work on getting the angle right, and it's designed perfectly for the pet, whether it's cat or dog. When they lick it, the food just ends up in their mouth instead of being out. And what it also does is, because of the shape, long-eared dogs, it keeps their long ears out, and it also slows down eating, both with cats and dogs. And it also comes with a diner, which you sort of see in the back there. And so that helps with the posture and everything. So that's what I decided to do. And I did a 3D prototype to test it with my pup. And once I saw that it worked, I thought, I'm going to proceed with this.
And what prompted you to, I know you have both utility and design patents on that have been granted. At which point did you start pursuing intellectual property protection for the idea? And was it something that somebody advised you to do? Is it something that you intuitively took on your own? Tell us about that journey, the patenting journey.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So my background is in information technology. I was in technology for over 30 years and always had ideas. So I kept the list. When you have an idea, to go ahead and, document it as quickly as possible and do a provisional. So I did a provisional while, actually that was the last step. Once I came up with the idea, did prototypes. Once I knew it was working and ready to make calls, that's when you apply for the provisional. So at least you have the date locked in and you have protection for a year. And then basically you wait until you find somebody to partner with. In my case, I licensed. I didn't venture the products myself. So once you find somebody, partner, then in Advanced Pet Products out of Michigan, they wanted it patented. So once we agreed that we were moving forward with it together, that's when I applied for a utility patent. And then as I read more, I want to make sure I had more protection. It was recommended that I do a design patent because that's a lot easier, quicker, theoretically. And so I applied for the utility patent, and then about 6 months later, I applied for the design patent. And again, we're talking about intellectual property. I also applied for the name. Once we agreed on the name, I went ahead and got it's a registered trademark.
Where was I love the name for the product, and we talked about that before. Where did the name come from? And is that your inspiration, or is that something the potential licensee suggested to you? How did Unspill-a-bowl, it clearly explains what it does. It's memorable. It meets all the criteria for a good brand. And I'm just curious how that came about.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate your feedback. So I'm creative in the sense of solving problems, but other creativities I lack. So what I did was I called a good friend of mine and I said, I need a name. So we brainstormed. We sat on the phone and brainstormed. We came up with probably 20, 30 items, and then we narrowed it down to about 10 or so. And then I sent it to Advanced Pet Product because I wanted them to be a part of it too. And this was at the top of my list, but thankfully they picked it. We agreed, and then we pursued it. So it was a combination of, like I said, a friend, me brainstorming, and then ultimately Advanced Pet thinking that was the right one. And of course, they're being in the market, I really trusted their judgment. So
yeah, no, terrific. It is a great name. Explains what the product does, and clearly protectable from an IP standpoint. Were there obstacles to getting? And you're correct when you mentioned that design patents are easier. Utility patents typically undergo several rejections before being able to convince the patent office of the unique and novel aspect of the idea. Was that your experience as well? Was it the rare case where it's an approval without a lot of back and forth fighting for the idea?
That would have been really nice, but no, it wasn't. That wasn't the case at all. I'll step back just a little bit because with both of my ideas, when I first approached patent attorneys about them, they were very skeptical. They said that they didn't think that either one of my ideas were patentable. So so basically, yeah, they were suggesting that I not even bother with it. But my instinct, I have no knowledge of patents, but I had this instinct that it was patentable, that perhaps they didn't understand the uniqueness of it. So I pursued it anyway. So we did that. So what happened was we applied, and because it was so difficult for the patent attorney, so I did get a patent attorney that was willing to give it a shot with me. I had to work with them very closely to respond to actually prepare the patent and to respond to office action, because he was still not totally there in terms of the uniqueness of it, but midway around the process, he did get to that point. And so I had actually quite a few office actions. And what happened was, given the shape, there were a lot of what they do, as you know, is they come up with a lot of prior arts, they put them together, and then they say that, if somebody else would have seen it, they would have come up with this idea, et cetera. So we went through that iteration multiple times, and the whole process took from the day that I filed to the day that it was actually issued. It was about 3.5 years. So we had to go through multiple ops actions. We had to also escalate. The lawyer had several meetings with the attorney to help explain the uniqueness and get it patented. So it was a long and emotional process, I'll say. So I was ecstatic when they finally granted the patent.
I printed out the first page of the patent here, and
Yes.
So people get an idea of the length of the battle. It was applied for September 27th of 2019, and was not granted until March 14th of 2023. So certainly a lot of pushback, but I'm glad you became like an advocate for your own idea, and even in a sense seemed to co-pilot the arguments along with the attorney, because an ideal situation is to have a lawyer that sees the uniqueness and is going to battle full charge on their own against the patent examiner. But the next best thing is an inventor that first persuades the attorney of the uniqueness of their idea, and then they team up and then try to persuade the patent examiner. We have at our firm 4 former patent office examiners, and one thing that we always do is kind of tag team with our former patent office examiners on new ideas, so that we kind of have an idea of what types of rejections we're going to face. And then the examiners that are at my firm, they kind of, they're now they've switched sides, right? They're no longer representing the patent office in rejecting ideas. It's their job now to help our inventors get the idea patented. So they're kind of having the knowledge of what another examiner would do, using that to push forward to get patents. And I'm glad that you pursued the design patent, because in addition to being easier to obtain and having faster prosecution time, let me see if that's the case. Yes. Oh, yeah, certainly. February of 2020 is when you filed, and by May 3rd of 2022. So it certainly is faster. Did you get any rejections on the design patent?
Yeah, I did there too. I had no idea that they were going to compare my bowl to flower pots. So it was sort of interesting with both processes. The prior art that comes back, it would just blow my mind as to how they came up with that idea. It was almost like they were trying to come up with everything that they could to keep it from being patented. So it was a challenge. And I did want to mention, the comment that you made about what you do in your firm. I would have really appreciated that, because 3.5 years was a long time. This didn't happen with the design, because that was a little bit simpler, and I knew we were going to, that was going to work out ultimately. So that was easy to persist. But
and less stressful, right? If you know that ultimately you're going to be successful, it's a lot less stressful than the devastation of every time an office action is received. Even for, I've been doing this 25 years, and upon first reading an office action, the way they're written, it looks like the examiners have found the smoking gun, right? Your first thing is like, oh my God, this was missed in the search, or somehow, how did I not see this? And then you start reading what they found. And like in your case, oh my God, a flower pot has nothing to do with, your product. So
exactly. And with the utility patent, what happened was, since it took 3.5 years, there were moments, and there were several times when the patent attorney came back and said, okay, I want to make sure that you want to proceed with this. The design patent is a lot cheaper, so that's another less stress. But a utility patent, it builds up after time, especially when it's hourly. I noticed that you do fixed price, which would have been awesome had I known that. But I was working with an hourly lawyer, and he would get to a point and be like, are you sure you want to proceed with this? I'm not sure. I'd give it a 50-50 or a 40% chance that you're going to get this. And each time I had to push through, stick with my instinct and go forward. So it was quite stressful at times.
Wow.
But again, in the end, it was exciting. It was great in the end when I got it. So,
but for a lot of inventors, it's the technical obstacle of persuading the examiner, but also the financial hardship and cash flow concerns of having to pursue patents early on in an idea's development before you have revenues coming in, and oftentimes before you have a licensee. I know you've had like a 30-some year career in the IT field before. How did you transition from that? Was it a difficult transition from a cash flow standpoint to go from there to developing products full time?
Yeah, so I was fortunate because I had some funds that I had set aside coincidentally, and I really didn't, like I said, didn't plan it until I got to saw some of the videos and started to think that perhaps it was time for me to retire. And also being married, I talked to my husband because I had to get his support too. Of course, back then I'm thinking this is like a 2-year process, and and based on what I had in place, I thought, yep, that's definitely doable. So, and because I'd been with my IT career for such a long time, I decided to totally retire from it and focus on this. So for anybody who's looking at, doing a similar thing and getting into the product development, you really need to make sure that you have the funds for it. If you don't, you need to stick with your primary job. So again, I was fortunate that I had support, but it took much longer than I thought to, get the idea, find a partner. And once you find a partner, getting it out to market, and once it's in market, getting the sales started. So it is a long process. And so the transition was, definitely manageable, sometimes stressful for me, but if I didn't have, the funds to begin with, and then my husband to sort of say, yep, I'm here with you, it would have been quite challenging.
So one of the, oftentimes immediate family is the first people you have to persuade that pursuing this is worthwhile. And 3.5 years is certainly a long time for any patent. Did you find reluctance on the part of potential partners and investors until the patent was granted? Was there like people waiting to see, well, let's wait and see if you actually get intellectual property protection, and then they showed interest in moving forward?
With both of them, they were both interested in starting before it was issued, because I kept them informed, but there was a bit of hesitation. I did notice that once I got the patent, things sped up a bit, and also they felt much more comfortable communicating it out, and that was definitely the case with the necklace. But thankfully, I think a lot of what I've discovered is a lot of companies are willing to, once they know that you've applied, they're willing to work with you at that point. And so they were very supportive. Again, everything I own though. So there are some companies that will actually pay for it. In my case, I paid for the patent process and also, own the IP.
Right. Okay. Speaking of the pendant saddle, let's have our moderator play a short video that explains that product as well.
New Pendant Saddle by Adrian Designs. Introducing the very latest innovation for pendant chains, the fabulously simple and very practical pendant saddle. You know the usual hassle of always having to adjust your necklace because the weight of the pendant pulls the chain and clasp around your neck several times a day? No more. Not with the fabulous pendant saddle. As you can see, the pendant saddle is exactly that. A neatly designed saddle shape that allows any pendant to settle into its center and stay there. As a result, The chain is no longer being pulled around your neck. Ingenious! You're going to love the pendant saddle. Available in 14 karat yellow or white gold. For more details, give us a call and order your own pendant saddle today. You're going to love it.
I absolutely, I have to say this about both of your ideas, because as a patent attorney, I see so many inventors. And in fact, I teach as an adjunct professor at Nova Law School, and the law students have the same view that if you go to see a patent attorney, you have to have, like, you know, a flux capacitor or a cure for cancer, or something that's incredibly complicated. And for a lot of the coursework, I'll bring up simple ideas, like, for example, like a Post-it note with removable glue on paper that's had $1 billion of revenues from this product. Another simple idea is the Jay Sorensen's coffee cup sleeve, which had over $1 million in licensing fees per year over 20 years. And then I'll mention one more quickly, and this is just a reversed label on a squeezable bottle, so that you're naturally inclined to store it this way. And because of gravity, you don't have to do what we used to have to do with glass bottles, is hit the back to get the ketchup out. The pendant saddle is just so brilliantly simple. And I love the fact that that you obtain patents not only on that, but on even the Unspill-a-bowl. The concept is incredibly simple. It's simply using gravity. Since I mentioned this product, you're using gravity as well to prevent spillage. What a great example of how ideas don't have to have moving parts or electrical components or a lot of complexity in order to solve a problem and be patented. Was that part of the reluctance? I think you mentioned that there was a hesitation from some attorneys to take on the matter and find patentability. Was the simplicity one of the factors that they were looking at?
That's, I think it was because the shape of each were so common, because, the bowl, they're round things all around, and it is, that one's, simple when you think about it. Once you sort of think about how you might keep food in the bowl, it's sort of natural to think that you're going to curb it. So I think that was one of it, in terms of the unobviousness, to prove that it's not obvious. And also this necklace with the pendant saddle, it's basically a U or a horseshoe shape, and there are pendants out there with those shapes, but they're not utilized in the fashion, and they're not in the size that mine is. And so I think that was what did it, in the simpleness. I think some people have a hard time understanding the value of it, and jewelers, though, do get it. So once I showed it to them and they saw how it worked, they totally understand it. But definitely that was a concern, that it's just, there are so many things like it that's going to be really hard to prove that it was unobvious. They assumed that it would be considered obvious, basically.
Yeah, and there's so many, memes about different things, and they all start with, I was this many days old before, or years old before I realized. There's that aspect to looking at the pendant saddle. Simply, like, it keeps the clasp, like, there's two ways to look at it. One is it keeps the pendant center and front, but also that forces the clasp to be centered at the back of your neck. And how many times do you see the clasp, which is unsightly, and that's where you end up moving it left or right to get it centered? What was the initial eureka moment for that idea? And again, same question as I had with Unspill-a-bowl. What did you find when you looked, and did you look to see if there's a solution already out there?
So with the pendant saddle, I wear pendant necklaces all the time. So this is a pendant necklace, and like I said, I wear it all the time. I've always have, and I was just really frustrated with the clasp. Like you said, you're constantly readjusting. And normally, if I had a regular chain, it would have already started to slide. Just the movements caused but again, gravity. Gravity actually has a role in both my Unspill-a-bowl and this. So gravity pulls it down. But so I really. And that was after I decided I was going to start inventing. That's when with this one, I specifically decided that I was going to see if I could find an elegant solution, because the only solution that's really out there are getting a weight and attaching it, a counterweight, and attaching it to your class. That way you have the weight here and it doesn't matter, so it doesn't spin anymore. And I don't want to do that. And also, some people actually, believe it or not, use eyelash glue, and they glue the necklace to their skin so that it doesn't move. And I don't want to do that either. So that's when I thought, well, let me see if I can come up with a way to solve this problem. Initially, I started with the pendant, focusing on the veil. I thought there's got to be something that I can do to the veil to keep it in place, and nothing came. I mean, I struggled with that. And then I thought, this is where my teeth thing came in. I thought, let me just change my perspective, take a look at it from a different point of view. And when I thought about the chain, the minute I thought about solving it using the chain, the saddle idea came to mind. I thought it would be, all you need to do is, because the idea was to keep the pendant in place, and the saddle, of course, you put the pendant there just like a rider on a horse, sitting on a saddle. It sort of keeps it in place. And what happens is this now is a counterweight to the clasp. So instead of having a weight attached here, this becomes a clasp and it stops. So so that's how that turned about. With the necklace, I knew there were already balance beads and knew that they were gluing it. So I didn't need to do much research. I knew that there was no solution out there. And Cliff, who is with Adrian Designs, who's a manufacturer, I still remember when I showed it to him at the trade show, once he saw it, he saw the necklace in hand and then he saw the video, and he just sort of went back and he goes, I can't believe somebody didn't come up with this before. And I thought, beautiful. So that I like the upside down ketchup and in the coffee heat cart.
Yep.
Yeah, the cup, I guess. Yeah, those. I mean, once you think about it, it's like, of course, that makes sense. So, so I was happy to get that kind of reaction with the saddle.
And the same thing with this. Once you see how elegant this solution is, there's still at some rest areas they'll have the like paper ears that fold out of a cup as another way to keep your fingers from getting too warm. And then once you see this solution, it's really, really hard to go back to the other way of doing it. And you realize what an unelegant way of solving the same problem. And just hearing you speak about, a counterweight at the back of the necklace as an alternative, and gosh, heaven forbid, like eyelash glue to keep your pendant in place, to have to do that every morning, every time you wear your necklace, and then have it break. I'm sure it's not foolproof. It breaks loose. It's got issues. You have to add additional. It's just makes the solution you've devised so much more, so much sweeter to have success with your product, because you realize what the alternatives are. Like even, it's not like the world would not go on without this, but imagine trying to find a piece of tape and find paper and find an alternative. It's just messy compared to this. Plus, the Post-its removal glue doesn't tear paper. There's so many other advantages to it that you see. No one ever looks back on certain ideas. And same thing with here. Once you have the squeezable bottle with the reverse label, like that's become the standard. And because patents provide a monopoly, for the monopoly period of 20 years, it's one manufacturer that gets to decide ultimately how it's used. So you may not have it as widespread, but that just means higher profits for the person for the inventor that licensed it. So this has been a phenomenal interview. We typically promise it to be a half hour, but I know we're a little bit over time, but you're just bringing so much value to others that are following in your footsteps. 2 remaining questions, and you can answer both, or you can go between them. One is, your background is not typical for a 30-year career in IT, and I want you to talk about it too. You can, if that's how that has helped in bringing these products about and bringing them to market. And secondly, and this one's more open-ended, like what advice would you have for an inventor that's in the early stages of developing their idea, something that you've learned maybe the hard way through your experiences with both your products? So we have all the time in the world, so feel free to address each of those, or even one of them, whatever you think speaks the most to your experience.
I think I can touch on both a little bit, quickly. In terms of transitioning from IT to information technology to inventing, it actually, at first when you hear it, it sounds like it doesn't really make sense, technology versus the other. But if you think about it, all technology is about solving problems, solving business problems and technology problems. And it's all about coming up with solutions. And you have a certain methodology that you go through. Once you identify the problem, you do root cause analysis, you come up with potential solutions, you talk to stakeholders, you design, you develop, and you test, and then ultimately, once that's successful, you deploy. So with inventions, I think many of us, most inventions are all about, again, solving a problem. In my case, I like to focus on consumer problems because I'm always, every day as I do things, I think you would mention that. I was trying to remember what you said. I listened to your TED Talks presentation, and you said life's little annoyances or something.
Yeah, the little irritations of life. Like this isn't, this is the great example. Like, a coffee cup being a little hot. It's not, it's not a huge annoyance. Having to hit the back of a bottle of ketchup is not, these aren't cures for cancer. They're not a car that doesn't solve the fuel, the energy crisis, or things of that nature. But those types of solutions are few and far in between. It's the improving the quality of everyday life in incremental small steps. And the theme for that TED Talk was it's the little things, because a lot of times inventors don't consider that little idea to be worthy of pursuing and getting a patent on or changing their career for, because it's just a small, tiny idea. But it's, most of the Fortune 500 companies today, a lot of them had their start with solving, with an individual founder solving a small problem that they faced themselves. So I'm glad you didn't let the fact that, that it seemed like you're addressing a small problem in the grand scheme of things stop you from pursuing the ideas.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually love that aspect of it, because I'm somebody, as I do things, there are lots of things that I feel like, could be done a little bit better, but you sort of focus on the ones that really frustrate you. So with me, it was the food on the floor and the necklace. So once I identified that, I focused on that. And of course, getting back to the invention process. So a lot of people invent to solve problems. And again, I focus on consumer related problems. Once I came up with that, I had to do, again, root cause analysis, what's causing the necklace to spin. Then you begin to think about weight, gravity, and you come up with potential solutions. Once you decide on one, I had to do prototypes. And I do think that it's important to mention to anybody who's interested in inventing that, it's one thing to draw an idea. And what I find is, how it works on paper doesn't always translate to working in practice. So the prototype piece of it, which is like the development in information technology, is essential to refine the design. Then you test it, and then you basically deploy it. So again, the process is the same. The thinking process is very similar. So to me, anybody who's watching this who's in information technology, I think can do this, especially, and probably medicine too. I mean, there's so many different careers where you go through that process, and I think that's the key thing in terms of transitioning to something like this. If you enjoy solving problems, I think you'll like this. And in terms of a suggestion, just going into it, I had no idea what this was going to be about. And what you'll find is that inventing, coming up with ideas, is very, very rewarding. It's a lot of fun. I met a lot of new people, learned a lot of different things. I got into new industries, and you meet other creative people too, which makes it a lot of fun. What I didn't realize was how long the journey is and how many challenges that I would be facing, and the fluctuations, the ups and downs. And so it's really important, I believe, to have, to believe in your product and have the passion to take it to the market, to make sure that it's successful. Because if you have the belief and you have the passion to push it through to success, then you're probably going to have the confidence, the commitment, and the energy to deal with the obstacles that you're inevitably going to face. I mean, there are many of them. And because of the many obstacles, and they vary in, from getting no's to the factory not doing what you want. I mean, there's just so many different things that you hit, even the marketplace and everything. So the key thing is persistence. So that's the characteristic that you really need to have. If you give up too easily, it's probably not for you. But if you're persistent, once you've got something and you want to see it through, and you can do everything you can to make it happen, then this might be a path for you as well.
Well, were one of your obstacles like naysayers along the way, not just licensees, but for a lot of inventors, it's of course persistence becomes harder as those who are closest to you, when they take a position of almost disbelief that this is something that is needed or something that has not already been invented. That's the beauty of both of your ideas, is just the initial reaction. Even as a patent attorney, I've seen so many ideas that our searches surprise us. We think we're going to find they're already patented and nothing comes up. That's certainly the case with your ideas. Like I first ordered the bowl. I didn't even know it was patented because I got it for my cat. I really didn't care if it was patented or not. I wasn't in patent attorney mode. And then when I got it in the packaging, it was like patented. Like, wow, that's where the curiosity kicked in. And I'm so glad. I'm so glad it did, because that's how we basically, through serendipity, stumbled upon your LinkedIn profile and thought I would ask you if you'd participate in this interview, because there's so many inventors that are going to get incredible value just from learning about your journey.
I'm so glad that you did buy the bowl, and you had told me before as well that you and the cat are enjoying it, and I actually loved your comment. I was trying to figure out, I'm not a marketing person, but you said that it actually improved your life, which I thought was a pretty cool way to look at it. So really appreciate you reaching out and wanting to, give me the opportunity to share what I went through. So really appreciate that. And I enjoyed, I've, looked at your business and what you've done, listened to your TED Talks, and I learned, I learned quite a bit. I wish I would have found you sooner.
Oh,
that would have been really nice.
Yeah, no, thank you. And yeah, so the funny thing is you go, like, this isn't improving the quality of life at all for my cat. Like, honestly, so that's why the cat really didn't care if it spilled, because it didn't have to worry about the cleanup. And I agree with you that the mat is just a horrible, even a worse solution than having the spill take place on tile, because now you've got an extra piece that you've got to throw in the dishwasher or hose off. So that was a solution that was even worse, I think, in my mind, than the problem, like the mats that are there. So it improved the pet owner's quality of life, because we're the ones that are taking care of all of this. So again, any final words that you want to say, and then we'll conclude. And I just want to thank you for participating.
Oh gosh, I appreciate it. I just want to. I think we've covered pretty much everything. The only thought that comes to mind is, again, if you're an inventor, to consider going to trade shows. Being in direct contact with potential manufacturers or distributors is very, very important. But outside, that would be the only thing that we didn't really touch on, which wouldn't make sense to do so here. But just wanted to thank you again. It's getting the kind of feedback that I have from a patent attorney is just amazing. You have no idea how excited I am to hear you say all the things that you said about my product. So I really appreciate it. And again, it's a pleasure having this conversation with you. And I hope we stay in touch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd love to. And I may, because I have that bowl, I may, of course, get a separate one for water. But
yeah, I hope so.
Or when I'm speaking to my the students at law school, of course, I'll have these incredible examples. But what better, what better than to bring up an example of the pendant saddle or the Unspill-a-bowl to show that this is not that these are like real people. That's what really helps with this interview, is that they see, okay, this is a real IT professional. They can go to your LinkedIn profile, they can check you out, they can see that this is not that this does happen in real life, that people with normal traditional careers get inspired and end up improving the quality of life for or millions of others that just have dealt with this small problem, but just never found a solution to it. So you've done that successfully, and your products are going to be added to my repertoire of examples for law students and even inventors who come and say, well, I'm solving this, but I don't think it's a big enough problem to address. And but what's big enough? I mean, I'm thinking of even things like the Snuggie, the blanket with 2 little holes cut in it.
Exactly.
$400 million of revenue. So there's a lot of people that are interested in small improvements to consumer products. So I think you're onto something, and I wish you the best with your company and continued success.
I appreciate it. I'm hoping it'll be just like the Post-it note or the ketchup or the cup around the coffee, where everybody has it.
Yep. Well, certainly. So the pet product, of course, is kind of a nit. You have to have a pet to benefit. But
exactly.
With the pendant saddle, that's hitting about 50% of the population that wear necklaces on a regular basis. So that's a huge market as well. So pleasure speaking to you. And again,
nice
we'll be.
Great. Thank you. Yeah.